Okay, so apparently we are about to go live. Only I could figure out what to do about all of this. Don't need that. So, kids, this is actually possible to start up a stream on a completely fresh computer in about 30 minutes, which is kind of cool. Now, if only someone was viewing, probably not, and they'd be able to tell me if there's actually any kind of audio on this thing. There should be. I don't know the levels. Using a phone that I haven't used for streaming before, I'm using having stream beats on the background, which should be good copyright-wise. I have no idea about the levels. I'm guessing the music is a little bit loud from the gauges here. But anyway, we're about to start pretty soon, so I'll just get myself a nice glass of my favorite bubbly, bouncy beverage. Yeah. So as always, don't be shy, show yourself in chat, say hi to the other oddballs who might be watching this, and let us go live. So, what we have here is what's it called? The Sleeper faction from the board game Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars is a really cool game. Oh hey, Modifian, welcome aboard. You're gonna be my test subject on this. How is the audio? Can you hear what I'm saying? And can you hear some quiet music playing in the background? Soft but mouse, nice, no music. Okay, so let us see. What about the music now? Okay, cool. I've very, very faint music now. Louder now. Okay. I'll try it here for a while. There's a little bit of lag from me changing things to you actually hearing it. So it's about as loud as I am. Okay, that's too loud. So here we go. Oh, hey Emily. As I said before, this is the Sleeper faction from Cthulhu Wars, the board game. And this one right here is... what do we have here? This is Tzataqua. If we can get in focus. He is an elder one, so the camera is not too happy about picking him up. It gets slightly crazy and insane. But again, that's the way it is. But he's kind of cool. Huge miniature. So much surface to cover. Thank you, Crystal, for letting me know about the levels. So yeah, this is Tzataqua. The plan for tonight, or at least stream, will be to get partly through another faction that I'm painting for a friend. So let's get rid of all these wonderful guys down here. By the way, the Sleeper faction has a kind of monster called a wizard, which we have here. So the next time Emmy you see Fulton or Bill, let him know that this is basically how wizards look in other games. So you can see it's got a huge mouth, gaping mouth in the middle, but man, you gotta love that beard. It's a little short, but it's nice. So let's get rid of all of this so we can actually start tonight's project. So painting all of this is going to be a little bit time consuming, but to avoid spending a lot of time doing details for something that basically just needs to be pretty on the table, it's not going to be display miniatures. It is not going to be entered into any kind of award shows like the Golden Demon Awards or whatever. This is just to give a friend of mine a little bit of better game experience. So me and some other friends got together for his birthday and decided that he should have a full set of painted miniatures for this game. So the next one we're gonna do here, we have a lot of cool stuff. Now, don't know if you know Cthulhu Wars or not, but this guy did the cool thing and he got the Cultists. See, this is Tzatzoqua's Cultist, and these are the Windwalker Cultists. Normally in the game, they're the same model, the same sculpt for the miniature. Come on, focus would be nice. But anyway, maybe now we'll be a little better at focusing. That is annoying. Anyway. The difference is that in the normal game all the cultists have the same sculpt across the different factions, but he got the expansion where each faction gets their own. So Tzatzoqua is plain old sacrifice people to do your nasty deeds, but the Windwalkers, they're very much about, you know, all the ice and snow, and they have yetis and wendigos, so naturally the cultists have parka coats with fur trim and very nice skulls on the back. Haven't seen those before. But to make this a little bit faster, we're going to cheat. No, we're not. There's no such thing as cheating when it comes to miniature painting. We're going to use this one here, which is one of the fairly new line of colors from Citadel Games Workshop, which is their contrast paints. This is effectively just somewhere between, I'm really not digging this autofocus or lack of autofocus. But basically they're designed to work like a mix between a wash and an actual paint. So it's fairly thin, as I'll show you in a little bit. And it just seeps into all the small cracks and crevices and so on in the miniature. So all the lower levels of the miniature are gonna be more saturated, gonna have more coloring, more pigment, and the raised areas are gonna have a lot less, which will give a nice finish, as you saw with the orange models. That's just one layer of paint or contrast paint going straight through. So to get this a little bit better, I had planned on thinning it down just a little bit with some thinning medium, and that turned into quite a lot of thinning. I just poured it straight into the pot. Should never do that. Learn from my mistakes. And now we're gonna cheat again and just do like this to soak up some of it. So we can actually close the lid without having too much spillage. That should do it. There we go. More tissue paper. Pro tip for all you painters out there, never run out of tissue paper when you're painting. You can use toilet paper, kitchen roll, whatever, just don't run out. So let's give it a good shake, as you can probably see. And here, to get the medium and the contrast paint mixed in quite nicely. And the reason I use the medium is that the Windwalkers, the coloring is, as you can see from the bottom here, is very, very light blue. It's not really white, there's some blue in it, but instead of going full on dark gray, whatever, I thin it down a little bit, so it should be good. I've not tried this, but it's a first for everything. So basically just let's see what goes on. So basically what you want to do is you want to get a lot of this contrast paint on your brush, and then just pull it on quite thickly. You cannot see that, so we'll redo it here. When you get all the droplets on here, you can probably see this fairly large amount of paint if you use miniature painting. And just when you see here, it's actually really thin. So when you spread it out, it becomes very, very transparent, translucent, something like that. So it doesn't actually get the full coloring, but it should give this nice light coloring all over the place. So let's try. Oh, and to give you an idea of what we're going through tonight, I won't be streaming all of it. We're just gonna take a look over here. It's all the white miniatures. We have this large crab thing in the end, in the back there. I will save them for last and just dig in with some of the smaller ones. That's basically, with the contrast paint, you really just want to get it on as quickly as possible. It has a far longer drying time than the normal acrylic paints you'll find from Games Workshop, Army Painters, Scale Colors, Vallejo. I don't know how to pronounce that, so if anyone can correct me, please do. Vallejo, I don't know. Vallejo, probably something like that. I do not speak Spanish. I think that's Spanish. But anyway, you can already see here the way the contrast paint flows into the recesses. It's coming through as more or less black on the screen, I think, on the camera. But it has a little bit of a blue tint to it. So it's sort of a bluish gray. Actually a really nice color now that I see it applied. And again, I thinned it down with a medium to make the process a little bit easier, to make the paint more translucent and give a little bit less coloring in the final product. The medium will also make it flow a little bit easier sometimes. It's this strange thing. I don't get mediums completely, because you dilute the paint, so you have fewer pigments per volume, and yet it's completely different with the medium than with if you just use water, for instance, which you shouldn't do with contrast paints, I think. Because if you thin it down with water, it's going to be more sort of runny and still go into the cracks instead of on all the other things. But with medium, it's kind of like you can stretch the paint further if you're using acrylics. So it's really weird, strange thing. It's kind of dilutes it without really losing that much sort of pigment, which doesn't make sense, but that's what I've learned from watching videos on the internet. So remember that, kid. Always learn everything you can from videos on the internet. It's the only trustworthy source of information. You heard it here first, in a video on the internet. So that's a pretty neat job right there. And I cannot use my normal habit of putting my brush in my mouth, because then I can't talk to you. So yeah, there you go. He has a lot more sort of bluish green tint to him, but that is one cultist down. 5 more to go. So as you can see, this is a very viable solution if you just want to have not a full color scheme on your models for board games, but just that little bit extra highlight shadow effect that will make them look good from a distance. Don't look too closely on this. I'm even doing a shabby job for contrast work as it is. But click all the links. Yes, Crystal, click all the links all the time. That is absolutely true. Especially all the affiliate links that I do not have, because I'm not there yet. Don't even think I want to be there. I think there are far easier ways to make money if you're a software engineer than go into the streaming market. So I'm doing this for the fun of it. And because I like to hang out with you guys, interact, chat, talk, and as a motivation to actually get this painting done. We're meeting up to play tomorrow, and I've had these miniatures for about 2 weeks now. I painted the Sleeper faction, and I obviously did not paint these ones until the night before, but that's just the way it goes. sometimes. So, this is going to take a little while, so let me know, what are you guys up to? Have you had a good day? Are you relaxing? If Dave is here, he's just getting started on Thursday, so yeah, talk about it. No? That either means that people have had such good days that they're afraid to share in case other people get jealous and envious of them, or that you're just lurking in the corner, which is perfectly fine, nothing wrong with lurking at all. I've done my share of that over the years. So, I think that was pretty much it for this next guy. Oh, hey! An idea for a stream game. Channel game. Chat amongst ourselves. Is that allowed? I don't know. Sounds sus. I'm guessing you're saying suspect? Or are you trying to spell out saucy, which would also be applicable for this kind of, indecent chatting late at night? At least over here. Kind of. So, another thing for contrast paint, what I'm doing here is that sometimes I'll wipe off my brush so I don't have any, not a lot of paint on it. I'll just briefly just touch it to the places where I think it has gotten a little too much paint, maybe spreading it around a little bit. It'll soak it up quite nicely and leave a lighter impression. See, like I did there. Yeah, if you can see it. I can't see it on my own monitor. So yeah, that was number 2 down. But a stream game. Oh, and a pro lurker. Awesome. Shishaldin, I'm not entirely sure who you are, but I have an idea, but I will leave that up to you to disclose. But anyway, we've done the first 2 cultists for the Windwalkers, and I cannot remember what their elder ones are named. So if someone feels like looking that up, go ahead and do so. Otherwise, we'll just start naming the cultists. Oh, Helena as well. Nice. Cool, welcome. Okay, it just strikes me that it could actually be 2 different Helena, not on the same account, but I'm guessing I know which one it is. Yes, I try to guess who everyone is. No, but what I was aiming at and hoping to get to the point eventually, but I tend to digress. What should we name these cultists? We already have the first 2 painted, so names for those, and then as we go along, we'll just paint it. Okay, and yeah, Modifian, you pretty much just confirmed which Helena it is. Also, I think the other Helene is probably asleep by now, or at least sensible and not online on social media. But anyway, names for the cultists. And yes, you are banned from naming things. No, you are not banned from naming things. Here, you are not banned. This is a safe place where everyone gets to talk and everyone can get offended. That's not what a safe space is. But unless someone comes up with some proper names, I'm gonna name them after you. So if you don't want me currently painting, well, let's see, who should be 3rd in line? I would say that should be maybe the little pony. Maybe the little pony Ellie. Equal opportunity offensiveness, yes. I believe, well, I know that it was the metal band Slayer that actually, in one of the more recent songs, had a discussion on all the whole aggression and hate and segregation, racial things going on, and their solution was to just be complete, as I said, equal opportunity offensive. I think the quote is something along the lines of, I hate everyone equally, that's my new philosophy, no segregation, separation, just me and my world of enemies. Something along the lines of that. So shout out to Tom Araya and the late Jeff Hanneman, Kerry King, Dave Lombardo for giving me a lot of good things to listen to as I grew up. So yeah, so anyway, that's Ellie done. So now we have this one over here, that's Crystal, that's Helene, and this is Ellie. And I'm gonna keep naming it like that. As long as you don't come up with proper names for them. And also, Emily, if you're still around, which you guess you are, I should point out that I am wearing a t-shirt for the benefit of John. I don't know if you can see it, maybe with the little light. No, you probably can't. Anyway, it's Iron Maiden's The Trooper, because I know he has that shirt as well, and I know he got a Trooper beer recently, which we actually have from time to time here in Denmark. I've tried it, it's really good. Lager, Pilsner, whatever you want to classify it as. Light, fresh beer. That's cool. So, fourth one here, Cultists. I don't know. I'm thinking Falsey for the next one. And now, for those of you who don't know, Falsey or Falseren is a character in a really awesome D&D 5th edition podcast called the Incorrigible Party Podcast. That is, and I've said this before, and you know this, the Incorrigible I cannot say that. The IP podcast is actually the reason why I cancelled not only Netflix but also Viaplay and HBO earlier this summer. I'm still clinging on to the evil, horrible Amazon Prime, but that's mainly because I was watching Downton Abbey at the time. Love it for the dialogue and the very slow British pace that just keeps on rolling for season and season. And currently I'm still clinging on to it because I actually found out that it has Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I'm kind of rewatching that. But yeah, reliving my childhood traumas, I guess. No, it's a good series. So yes, we are going to call the fourth Windwalker cultist Falterin, or Falsey. Which reminds me, Emily, have you ever considered that if Falsey ever really got his own wizard's tower, it would have to be called Falsey's Tower from the old John Cleese series, which is very much outdated at the moment, but never really watched it. Just never was. Yeah, and Buffy was so good. Actually, Emily, it still works. I mean, yes, some of the effects are a bit cheesy because they're from the late 90s, but even considering those that they're not that good, I still think with bad effects it still holds up. I think the plot and the dialogue and all that is really well written, not surprisingly since it's just Whedon. And while I don't believe that the actors, especially at that point, were very good, they are also not very bad. I mean, they actually, for me at least, they make the entire universe and setting come alive really nicely. So it's kind of cool watching it again, and yeah. Exactly, Falsey's Tower. So Falsey's Tower would be next. Oh, you watched the whole Buffy series as well. I'm just getting into season 3, and I'm guessing it's so old that we don't have to do spoiler warnings, but to avoid insulting anyone, here's a spoiler warning. We will be talking about what happens in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so if you have not watched it yet and plan on watching it here 20 years after it showed. This is when you should stick your fingers in your ears, turn off the stream, go do something more sensible. But no, I just got started on season 3, which is after Angel is sucked into a void when Buffy basically pushed a sword through his stomach because he summoned an old nasty demon. It's what happens. If you gotta end in a relationship, that's one way of doing it. But anyway, she took the summer off, went up to, I'm guessing should be New York, did some random stuff, killed a demon or two, messed up some things, helped some people, blah blah blah. Hey AJ! Oh AJ, welcome to the game of Name a Chaos Cultist. Well, I'm painting Cultists at the moment for the board game Cthulhu Wars. So, a suitable name for someone who would actually choose to summon an elder god of Lovecraftian proportions. And no, AJ, we've already used Falterin, so that one's taken. Oh, I can actually hear the music playing myself, so should probably not start humming because I will be out of tune as always, and I will definitely not be following the music that I cannot hear, so it's probably just gonna mess it up for everyone and everything. It's fine. Anywho, oh, you're going mining. Oh, Isabella, yes, of course, this is Isabella. We can clearly see that this is obviously a female cultist. So clear with the huge coat, and you can see it from the way her glasses set. Obviously, this is Isabella, or Izzy. And also a big thank you to all you wonderful people for actually choosing to follow this channel. Actually made it all the way to 10 followers earlier today when one of my good friends decided to join as well. Follow. There we go. That's easy done. And for the 6th and final cultist, who do we choose? Let's do a name. Hey, Bilban, welcome to the stream. We are naming Chaos Cultists. And just chatting about stuff in general. I talked a little bit about painting with the new-ish contrast paints from Citadel, Games Workshop. And for these projects, I really like them. They give a nice vibrant color. It seeps in, gives the definitions through a lot of shading, highlighting. Well, not so much highlighting. You can do a quick dry brush on top of this if you want. I don't, because the idea is just to paint all 10 or 11 factions as quickly as possible. And with the amount of miniatures and the amount of surface to paint, it's just, I don't think it's worth it. We're just going to be playing with these guys, and we're going to be looking at them from somewhere between 0.5 meter to 1 meter apart, and then the contrast paints will do quite nicely, as they will is accentuate a word? They'll show off the details of the miniatures quite nicely. So maybe I should talk a little bit about the game itself, because even though it is almost impossible to actually get your hands on, more or less Kickstarter only, or otherwise it is insanely expensive. It is really well working game. And one thing is that the miniatures are insanely big, and all of these go onto a board. So you will sometimes be in a situation where you can't fit all the miniatures. All 5 miniatures cannot fit in West Africa, for instance, or East Africa. I think it is. It's a little bit on the small side, and well, the board is obviously just the Earth as we know it. So you'll have the different parts of it, and yeah, so they're pretty big. And for the latecomers, can see I'll be waiting a little bit with this one, but this little dude that I don't know the name of is one of the miniatures that actually will clonk go onto the board. Sorry if your ears just went pop. So yeah, we didn't get a name for the last one. Yeah, they're really cool, and what I really like about the game as well, again about the miniatures, they have really good details. I mean, take something like Zombicide or even Gloomhaven, where people generally say, oh, Gloomhaven miniatures, they're so wonderful, they're so detailed, blah blah blah, but they're not. I think some of the ones I have small sort of misprints or whatever called, miscasts, I guess. So you'll get details that you can't see. You can't see what they are. One of the common jokes is that one of the starting classes, so no spoiler there, is the Vermling. It's called Vermling Mind Thief, and the Vermlings are sort of a small ratish. Right, Jacob. AJ, the last one is called Jacob. Good call. No, but the miniatures, I have some of them here. Some of the Gloomhaven miniatures that I painted recently. Again, painting for a friend. And focus, damn it. No, I probably need a better camera for this. But anyway, this one here, the Crack Heart, is fairly decent. Oh, there we go. It is fairly decent. He was really easy to paint. You again using the contrast and a little bit of black and metal, doing a few details, starting in the eyes. Hey, Bill! And you gotta run him. See you. Have fun. Thanks for stopping by. No, but he was good quality, and I will actually take the Vermling Mind Thief that I spoke about, who we have here. We get a little bit of focus, because one of the running jokes is that small brown dot on his right shoulder. The running gag is that the only people who actually realized that there are 2 rats on this miniature are people who try to paint it, and the joke is sort of like, oh, you mean the rat? Because no one sees it, because you just see the miniatures without priming or base coating. You cannot see the details well enough to realize that it's actually a rat, and people still praise them for being good quality miniatures. And as someone who grew up painting Games Workshop miniatures, I really have to say they are not that good. The ones from Gloomhaven. I will. You got an emote approved. Awesome. No, Bill. Damn you. Yeah. See you, Emily. No, Gloomhaven. Yeah, I read that as Games Workshop. No, Gloomhaven. They're not good. I tried doing the Spellweaver, and I got some effects off pretty nicely, but when I was doing the face, I noticed that just over her left eye is this weird protrusion that I can't figure out if it's an attempt at an eyebrow, if it's a miscast, or if it's something I just simply cannot see what is. So yeah, so I didn't put a lot of effort into these miniatures. Again, a lot of it, the flames at the bottom and the skirt and the blouse, again, contrast paints works really nice for this kind of project. And the bottom here is a special effects terrain water effect from Vallejo or AK or something, I can't remember. But I mean, these miniatures, oh, they're not that good, and people still praise them, and it tickles my that's not right gene. But anyway, moving on with today's project, we have coming up the Windwalker High Priest. Well, they did that as an expansion as well. You can't really see him. Again, back to Cthulhu Wars. I am all over the place today. It's who I am. That's how I work. Well, not work, but that's how I function as a human being. No, but in Cthulhu Wars, they did an expansion. So in addition to the normal cultists, you can also get a High Priest. And the High Priest is a little bit more expensive, but has the added bonus of you can later on you can sacrifice him to get extra power, and power is the resource or money kind of thing that you use to summon monsters, move your stuff around on the board, summon elder gods, activating powers, and all of that. So, but one of the reasons I like Cthulhu Wars is that these models actually have a lot of detail, which is not surprising since the guy who made it, Sandy Peterson, is pretty infamous, I guess, for doing these oversized miniatures in way too high detail, driving up the cost of the games to ludicrous amounts of money. But hey, it works, and the miniatures look great, and the game is actually really fun to play. One of the reasons it's fun is, yes, you get to place all these huge monsters on the board, and it just feels so nice. But that does not make the game great. That would just make the game enjoyable once, maybe twice, just for the effect, just for the what the heck. The miniatures, Bill. Yeah, I've not studied them in depth, but I have seen them, and they actually look quite nice. And so yeah, I don't know if I'll get a chance to paint any of them, but those are probably the ones that I would turn into an actual project and do proper shading, highlighting, and not just doing a single color contrast paint. But yeah, no, but the actual game itself, one of the reasons I like it is that it's asymmetrical, which means that each faction, each elder god, has its own set of rules, set of powers. Of course, you can always do the basic stuff like everyone can move, everyone can initiate a fight, and so on. That's the basics. But when it comes to the parts that really matter, like what monsters do you have? Yes, you all have cultists, but then you have the black goat, Shub-Niggurath. Hey, Katja. Oh, Bill, you need to get an asymmetrical game. They are really, really fun. It just completely messes with your mind that you have to think differently when you're considering what your opponents will be doing. But also, I'll give you a few suggestions. But from a game perspective in Cthulhu Wars, I find it to actually be incredibly balanced. Yes, if you mess up, if you blow your first turn, you will have a hard time recovering, but it is very much doable because the game always turns at some point into the classic situation of, we have to do something about this guy or he's gonna clearly win right now. And so the other people, even if you're far behind, you can just sit back a little bit and let number 2 and 3 or whatever actually deal with this dangerous person. Maybe you can do a little bit to help or assist, but that'll give you a little time to recover some of your lost ground. But again, against good gamers, good players, you will always have a hard time if you mess up your first turn of 2 turns. But even so, I find it to be very balanced. I find it to be really enjoyable to play. It is not an easy game to get into because you have a set of monsters. I think you have 2 or 3 types of monsters, and you have 1 or 2 elder gods, and then you have 6 spell books that get activated through different events. And the events again are different from faction to faction. What you're supposed to do is different from what I'm supposed to do, and whoever's also playing is also gonna have different goals in life. And when you then get your spell books, then you get some very thematic powers into play. What's it called? I think it's Hastur, the yellow sign, which can do a desecration. They just have a power where they can desecrate an area. They just leave a mark, and that mark gives you extra power in the power phase. So you have more quote-unquote money to buy stuff with. And when you have activated Hastur, summoned him, you can get a spellbook. Well, you can get the spellbook at any time you fulfill your criteria, but one of them requires Hastur to be in play. And when he's in play, the price of your desecration drops from 2 to 1, which is a huge change cost-wise, because that means you'll just be desecrating all over the place. It also means you get some bonus points out of it, which just means you're going to be racing ahead on the track. So you're not getting points in the same way as the others are, you're getting points through desecration. And if you're playing against someone who hasn't really spotted that, you can maybe get in a few desecrations. You desecrate more than once in a single turn. And when you do that, you just get some extra points. And these points are secret, so your opponents cannot see how many points you really have. So yeah. So, let's see. Root, TI4, Cthulhu Wars, Spirit Island. Oh, Spirit Island, Bill. Love that game. But that is a co-op game, so it doesn't so much require you to figure out what your opponents are doing, because your opponents are basically, well, not computer controlled, but board game. The game controls the opponents. Oh, thank you. A natural challenge. I am very good at just yabbering on, despite no one being in the room. Yes, that is correct, Bill. But hey, I have the best audience I could imagine. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for saying that. If you want a good asymmetrical game, you should look into Vast, Bill. Vast Crystal Caverns, isn't that what we call it? It is a little bit strange, but it's basically a dungeon where you have, in the base game, you have 4 different players or factions or whatever you can choose. You can choose to be the knight who goes down into the dungeon. You can choose to be the goblin tribe, I believe it is. You can choose to be the dragon that roams around and I have mixed things to say as well, but I think that as a game, when it came out, it did a lot for the asymmetrical style, and it's called a cavern. Internal joke for those of you who listen to the Incorrigible Party podcast. There, I said it. No, but Vast did a lot of things for asymmetrical games, in the sense that it was one of the first really large games that were completely different, because one of them is a goblin tribe. It's a bit like how Normal Pandemic did a lot for co-op games, or how Risk Legacy did a lot for the entire Legacy genre. It basically kicked off the Legacy genre, despite other games having had this kind of evolution, or this kind of the game changes over time, slightly roleplay campaign style kind of thing. But the Risk Legacy game, I believe, was the first that went to the extreme of saying, hey, this is your board game. Now you're going to destroy it. You're going to rip up cards. You're going to add new rules in the rule book. You're going to put stickers on the board. You're going to type your name. No, Modifian, you know what I'm talking about, because we actually played the first 7 or 8 games of Risk Legacy together with some other people. But the reason I think Vast, you should maybe not buy it, but at least try it if you can, because the concept of having a knight would be fine, and then you could have, I don't know, a rogue, you could have an archer, you could have a wizard, and oh, there you go, it's asymmetrical, because each player plays a different character class, like in role-playing games and so on. But playing the dragon is really weird, because the dragon is not awake to begin with. It's not until certain events that I can't remember triggers it then the dragon awakens, and it changes its rule set. And I think I actually forgot the most exciting part, which is the fourth faction you can play in the base game of vast crystal caverns. That is the cave itself. It means you get to move around pieces on the board, you get to collapse tunnels, you get to do all sorts of things. I don't know, maybe make traps, whatever. All of these things. You play the actual dungeon. And that means that you're not just playing a character in a game. You're not just, don't have a different skill set, but I mean, even Cthulhu Wars, as asymmetrical as it is, you still have your cultists, you have your monsters, you have your elder ones, you have your powers. The cave doesn't really have monsters. The knight doesn't have monsters. The goblin tribe, they have a lot of monsters. They have goblins. They're a complete tribe. So that level of complete asymmetrical, not only in terms of powers, but in terms of the entire concept of the faction. And man, I felt completely for that. I played it a few times, and it's a nice game. It's a good game. Definitely not a bad game, worth trying. But it's also a game where after a few games of it, I just went, it's probably not a game I'm gonna play again for a really long time. And then other asymmetrical games started showing up as well. So yeah, and yes, it has a bit of a chewy feel to it. The Wendigo. This is actually not the Yeti. I need to get an actual camera that can focus for this. Maybe next month. I don't know. Which reminds me, if you have any good suggestions for good cameras. I mean, we're not talking webcams here. The one I'm using is just a C922 from Logitech, which is nice enough, but apparently can't focus. But I'm thinking of actually getting either one of the Canon M50s or maybe a non-DSLR. Never tried that. I'm a little old school in the sense that good cameras need to be SLRs at least in my world, but there's so many good ones. Yeah, I can turn autofocus off in the accompanying software and set a fixed focus. Yeah, hang on, I'll do that. Show. Now, where is he in focus? Oh, well, I'm gonna have to fix that in a little bit. Because one of the things about contrast paints is that once you start painting, you really want to finish it before it dries too much. Because once it dries up, it's nearly impossible to work on the same color and the same effect. Either you'll get a second layer, which will be a lot more saturated with colors than the rest of the miniature or the areas you're painting, or you will actually mess up the paint job, especially on large surfaces. This one is very forgiving because of all the fur, but if you have a flat surface like a cloak or whatever, you can actually start making kind of scratches in the contrast paint as it dries. So work quickly, and I'll fix the focus in between miniatures. Now, fixed focal length, yeah. No, but I mean, you should just be able to find the right lens or for it. I forget all these terms. I mean, the focal length is not actually the focus. It's just the zoom, I guess you could say, where how wide it's angled, wide or low angled. isn't it? I can't remember. It used to be to remember all these details. But hey Bill, do you actually do miniature painting? And yes, Katja, the lamp is in the way. I did not have time to move it. I ran into the interesting challenge right before setting this up that the only long network cable I have is at a friend's house. I don't have it at home, which means that I need to go through the switch in a router with 2 short cables to be able to get a network connection to my laptop at my work desk here. There we go. That's a nice chewy looking Wendigo. So anyway, and yes, so yeah, the lamp is in the way. I can probably move it up a little bit. I still have enough light because I don't need that much light for the contrast paint. But focus. Now, if I want this to be in focus, I want to do something along the lines of, that was way too far, it's too close. So here, I think this is pretty good. We are going to go with that for the time being at least. And yes, Bill, you need to go back into painting. And yes, I lick my brushes. So always lick your brushes. Well, no, you shouldn't. But it is a common habit among miniature painters. And to my knowledge, none of us have died from that yet. I also need to give this a good shake. See, Bill, that's just one of the many reasons you need to get back into miniature painting. Licking brushes, completely valid excuse right there. And even better, you get to either buy your own or steal Elena's makeup brushes. Because makeup brushes make really, really good dry brushes. Which isn't really surprising considering what their main purpose is. So yeah, so now you can see my face, but it's probably getting a little too much light on one side and too little on the other. Yeah, brushes is always a thing when you're painting. When you start out, you get maybe 1 or 2 and figure, I might get a third one at some point, but what am I going to need them for? I mean, it's just brushes. And you can actually get away with, if you have a good quality, not necessarily expensive, but just a good quality brush that feels good and that you like, you can actually do a lot of detail even with large brushes. I do most of my normal miniature work with a size 0 brush. Thereabout, which is not normally thin enough to do details, but I have been known to actually do eyes with it and do basically everything but really small teeth or something like that. Nail brushes, I don't know, maybe, probably. Don't know if they would be good for dry brushing. I don't really know if you're trying to troll me here, because a nail brush, in Danish at least, is something you use to scrub the inside of your nails with, which would probably just tear off all the paint from the miniature. But going back to the number of brushes, you start out with a large brush, you start out with a small brush for some detailing, and a dry brush. That's a classic setup. You have those 3 brushes, and the dry brush you will wear out a normal brush. But you can still just use your normal brush for it. I've done that actually for years, painting when I was younger. But then all of a sudden you go, oh, but it would be nice to have a size 1 brush. And then you paint something like this, where I'm actually using a size 7, simply because I need a lot of paint and I need to cover a lot of surface really quickly. So large brush, and I don't need detail because the entire miniature is getting the same color. And then all of a sudden you have, let's get them into view, you have this. And that's not even all my brushes. And I don't have a lot of brushes compared to some of the other people. You see, if you follow someone like Goobertown Hobbies, which you should if you paint miniatures, or Mini AC, Scott, which you should if you paint miniatures, or Sarastro, Dr. Faust, Duncan, Tabletop Minions, and Wargamer Girl as well has some really good videos. And then there are all the people that I don't know about yet or can't remember. But if you see them, they'll have, 1 or 2 cups just filled with old brushes. That's really, really interesting. So yeah, a little bit of name dropping never hurts. They're really cool people. If you actually see Tabletop Minions, he's got some really good all-round advice, not just for painting miniatures, but also for the gaming hobby industry and how to behave yourself, a little bit about, playing games in leagues and stuff like that. And he is really cool. He's an elderly chap like myself, probably a little older. He has really nice beard. Nail art brushes. No, but he talks about a lot of things. And one of his friends is called Sam Lenz. Sam Lenz is an insanely good miniature painter. He's won a lot of awards and stuff like that. It's really fun to see him paint, because he's also this cool, relaxed dude, definitely into metal music of different kinds, but he uses the cheapest synthetic brushes he can find. Well, I don't know if you can find them cheaper, but he uses really cheap. I don't know if he gets them from a dollar store or from Wish maybe, or something like that. He just buys a bunch, and when they're done, they're done. He just use them for dry brushing, throws them out, whatever, because they cost so little. Whereas other people would go completely all out and do the Raphael or Winsor Newton or some of the other really large brands. And I have a few Winsor Newton brushes. Really, really happy with one of them. Really displeased with another one. I actually have 3. There you go. That's me showing that I spent way too much money on brushes. But anyway. So, that's 2 Wendigos down. Yeah, very fancy brushes. But now, one brush I will show you is this one. That is an Army Painter Wargamer Regiment brush that I got about 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago. You can see how much is worn out compared to one of the newer brushes from the same. Actually, I got these 2 brushes at the same time. Guess which one I've used the most. But this one here. Again, lick your brushes. They love the attention. This one here is not the smallest brush in any way. Little water is also sometimes a good thing. Just get it started. So it's not the smallest brush. It's very worn out by now in the tip. You might be able to see it a little better here. But the tip still holds. It has 1 or 2 stray hairs that you can't see on the camera, but it works. And I do most of my normal painting with this. Hey Emma, welcome. So yeah, so we're talking brushes, Emma. So this one here, I've used this a lot, especially over the last 2, maybe 3 years since I really started getting back into miniature painting. Not that I paint a lot, but I do. And I've used it for contrast paints, I've used it for dry brushing, I've used it for base coating, for some fine detail, highlights, layering. I've used it for everything. I think a lot of the miniatures I've painted in the entire base game of Imperial Assault, I think I painted by far the most of them with this brush alone. Yeah, see you, Bill Ben. thanks for stopping by. So basically, this is just completely worn down, but the tip still holds for some reason. It's absolutely amazing. I love this brush. Not just this brand or this model, but this particular brush. So yeah, remember to drink. So anyway, we have now been live for about an hour, and I have 9 miniatures painted, which is not a lot, but then again I'm also digressing all over the place, so that's fun. When I'm done with this paint project, I think maybe I need to paint 1 or 2 more factions for my friend for Cthulhu Wars, but I would like to either get started on one of the expansions for Imperial Assault I have the one with Jabba the Hutt. What to drink while painting? Oh, that's simple, Katja. Just drink your from your paint, your washing cup. So much easier. You'll get some coloring, you'll get a little bit of flavor. Perfect setup. And it is really an important question. One of the Danish miniature painters who also stream from time to time, he was actually asked which paint tastes the worst. I can't remember what he said. But these are important questions. And it will, of course, vary from painter to painter, because we all have different tastes, and that is as it should be. I mean, there are people who don't like meat, there are people who don't like beer, there are people who don't like wine. That's perfectly fine, because then there's more for the rest of us who do like it. Yes, and what to drink? What I'm drinking at the moment is just plain old Coca-Cola with sugar, because that's how I roll. Other than that, I do drink a lot of water. That definitely keeps me hydrated well enough, and it's just good. We have nice drinking water in Denmark, at least where I live. So you can just drink tap water, put it in a bottle, put it in the fridge, it's been nice and fresh, and just take it out. Don't waste a lot of resources. Don't drink all the water from the earth. But then again, if you live in Flint, Michigan, don't drink the tap water. So anyway, Bill and Elena, are you out in Star Citizen? Mining away? Maybe you are? Oh, well, you know I'm pretty tied up here, so I'm not gonna drop by and annoy you and blow your ships up and all that. And I don't think any of the people watching here, other than you guys, actually play Star Citizen, so I think you're pretty safe. And also, you don't have to say where you are. Yeah, please don't. I will stop by with all my paint, and I will give your ships a paint job. Oh, you're supervising. So, Elena, did you actually get a rock? For the people not in the know, the rock is a small mining buggy in the computer game Star Citizen that we all play. And you got your own rock. Perfect. So one thing that you might be able to help me with the rock when we're playing Star Citizen, I find it's called the collection mode, where I actually suck up all the ore you've mined. I find that to be really difficult to just pick up a single piece of Hadanite or whatever. Is there some kind of trick that I'm not getting, or am I just not precise enough, or something like that, Bill? talk about it. There. That is the next Wendigo done. I mean, basically build that mode on the mining laser on the rock seems pretty straightforward. Point and click. Sometimes just wait a little bit when you actually can see that the collection power of collection force or whatever it's called goes up a little bit. Just wait. Just wiggle it around a little, and then sometimes it does its job and sometimes it doesn't. I hope they improve that, because I hate leaving bits and pieces around, but I've just found that it takes way too long to actually pick up those last 4 or 5 individual pieces with the mining. And with the inventory being what it is, jumping out and picking them up by hand is also not really an option, I think. So yeah. So I basically just go for finding more spots and getting out as much as possible as quickly as possible. And then just leaving the remains for the scavengers. So yeah. Oh, again with the humming. I should not hum. No, but as I said before, I really want to, when I'm done with this, I really want to get either started on the expansion for Imperial Assault, mainly because I like painting stormtroopers. Now that's a lie, I hate painting them because it's just white with a little bit of black and a little bit of color here and there. But I like having them painted up yet. But I would also like to get cracking on a small crew I have for the game called Malifaux. And the crew is basically the Latigo family, which is a Mexican, or at least Mexican-inspired gang of, I think it's fair to call them bandits, outlaws, renegades, something like that. And they are gunslingers to a fault, all of them. They have the fastest guns in the West and just blazing ahead, which they need because they are also monster hunters. Because Malifaux is set in a really weird and strange world and setting and universe. I really love it, and they even made a role-playing game for it. But again, Malifaux is a small miniature skirmish game, so you have small groups of people. You don't have a full-blown army like you have in some of the Warhammer games, like 40k or the old Fantasy Battle, which is now Age of Sigmar, I guess. But the skirmish games are really good because while the rules are usually a lot more complex than some of the large games I found, then the game experience is often a lot shorter. You play the games faster because there's not as many miniatures you physically have to move. And for me, it's really important that you don't have to paint 50 miniatures to have a working army or warband or whatever. You can actually get away with somewhere between 5 and 15, depending on which exact faction you're playing and so on. But painting 10 miniatures versus painting 100, that is a lot less daunting, and when the games are even quicker, you get a lot more action, you have a lot more stories to tell about. And we remember that time when Perdita went up on the hill and started blasting away at the horrible Neverborn monsters showing up, and she just blew Sleeper out of the air, or whatever happens. And in Malifaux, the world, as I understood it, the game came to be because this company, I think they were called Weird, WYRD, Weird, just basically did a lot of miniatures. They were not a game company, they just did miniatures they thought were cool. And then one day, someone got the idea of making a game where they could use all their miniatures. And that's how you come up with what is essentially a Victorian steampunk Wild West horror cross-dimensional voodoo bio goblins setting. I don't even know what to call it. Bill, IPCon, we're gonna play Malifaux. Other noteworthy skirmish games are Kill Team in the Warhammer 40k universe. It is Warhammer Underworlds in the fantasy setting, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy, whatever. That's actually more close to a it's more close to a board game. It really is a board game, but it does have some list building. You know, we're talking about Warhammer Underworlds now, whereas your team, your core warband will be fixed depending on what. Cheat and win. Bill, it is only cheating if you get caught. That is the first rule and only rule you need to know about cheating. You should also know that if I do catch you cheating, I will probably just laugh and say, yeah, sure, go ahead. I tend to play very casually, even when I'm playing tournaments. But Kill Team, Warhammer Underworlds, you play it on a board with hex fields, or spaces, squares, whatever. You have a warband which is always the same number and type of miniatures per faction, so the orcs will always be the same, 4 orcs and so on. But what you do then is you have your set of action and goal cards, your objective cards I think they're called, and you build that deck to the way you like to play your warband. Unintentional cheating is just, you can always just say, oh, I didn't know the rules, I'm just stupid, I don't understand this. That sometimes works. Except when you play on really, really high level tournaments. Then I was told Monday afternoon, we talked about it at the local game store where I host some game nights once in a while. We talked about what goes on some of the specifically FFG Keyforge. FFG is Fantasy Flight Games. They've done a lot of good games and they're doing a lot for the community as a whole. But they probably also have their own internal problems like everyone else. But anyway, on high level, world championships, which they do, it would actually be possible for someone to just be disqualified if they make any kind of play error. I mean, you remember a rule wrong, so you take too much gold or whatever is relevant for the particular game. That can actually be a bannable offense at that level because you should know all the rules by heart, and they have no way of determining if you did this out of as a plain old mistake or if you are doing this to later be able to exploit some weird obscure mechanism that you know will come into play 2 rounds from now, which requires you to have 1 too many or 1 too few or whatever. So they're really harsh on that, which I guess makes sense. I mean, some kind of warning system could also be in place. It is at some levels, but doing it at that level is horrible. Exactly at that level. One of the worst cases of cheating I've ever seen, also one of the worst ways of handling it, to be honest, was in an X-Wing games. X-Wing is a small miniature skirmish game. Again, noteworthy skirmish games, X-Wings miniatures. But on a live stream of one of the matches at a large tournament, some guy obviously cheated. It's really, really visible because what you do is you have some small cardboard dials and basically you just choose the maneuver for your ship and then it gets revealed later on. So you choose without knowing exactly what the other people are doing. So it's really, really important that you choose the right move. Now, what could be seen on this stream, and I think people went overboard with how much hate they threw in his way. Because one thing is, yes, he's a cheater. He should be banned. He should probably not even be allowed to come back. Fair enough. But people took it. They took it too personal. I think that you should never do that. It is still only a game, even when there's money and prizes and all that. It's a game. No, but what it is, you're allowed to look at these things afterwards. Excuse me. Just to refresh your memory, what is this ship doing when you're planning ahead and plotting and considering what your response should be and so on. But when he put down this small dial, he just gently just rotated it just a little bit. And people saw it because it was right next to the camera. And people went nuts. He was disqualified for the tournament, but he won the game. People with more knowledge of the game than I have estimate that part of the reason he could win, a large part of the reason, was that his dial got moved in this particular place to the left or right or whatever, and then they know the kind of moves available for that kind of ship, blah, blah, blah. So if he hadn't done it, he would have been royally screwed. Now he changed it to something that basically made him go left instead of right or whatever. And that really helped him win the game. The problem is that in this particular tournament, as I recall the story, he was disqualified from the tournament, but his win still counted, which means that the guy he cheated against was didn't make it to the final rounds in the tournament, and I don't think that was a good way of handling it, because they did the ruling, I think, before the next game started. So if they've decided to ban him because of this, he should have lost the game. I'm not entirely sure what their reasoning behind it was. I don't know if they've actually, or if they even want to make that kind of decision making public. But yeah. Hello, Brit. So, crew is all here. People are dropping off. Thank you for showing up. We are just painting, coming up with names for cultists, talking about games and basically anything that comes to mind. So yeah, lots of wonderful people here. Yes, of course you're in bed. It's late. It's 10:15. Way past your bedtime, young lady. But I appreciate you stopping by. So Bill, trailing all the way back to Malifaux. Can't see who's here. We have Bill, I think AJ's there as well, a couple of my friends here from Denmark as well. We had Bill Ben dropping by, Emily. So, yeah. And yes, Elena's out mining. So that is the first of the Yetis. Now we're doing this on manual focus because it's really crap at focusing on the miniatures. The gang, why? Why what? Or just, oh, the puppies. So, what's with the puppies? Okay, just a normal checkup, that's good. All is good in Puppyland. And when all is good in Puppyland, we're all very happy. Okay, see you, Bill. Thanks for stopping by. It was a pleasure, and thanks for the feedback. I really appreciate it. I would like to make this a recurring thing. I do plan on streaming every Wednesday. Partly because I think it's actually a fun activity to do, but also because it might actually motivate me to, get some games going, to paint some miniatures, to just do random stuff. I also have some other more sort of artsy paint projects that I'd like to share. Something called acrylic pouring. Hey, Super McDad. Hey Dave, you made it. So how's things on the other side of the world? Thanks, Alana. I don't know how many people would actually agree with you that it's fun to listen to me ramble, but I do that a lot. Just randomly talking shit is something you learn when you're a DM, I guess. Or maybe I'm just a natural. Cool. So, work, yeah. So, guess I want to say I really appreciate that, Dave. Thank you for stopping by to say hi. That means a lot to me. This is still only my second stream in total. Transferable skills. I keep saying D&D should be able to be listed on a resume. Oh yes, I think it actually could be. I actually have something like that listed on my own resume, especially also with the board game cafe. The board game cafe, because it's volunteer work, which is always good because it shows you get engaged and blah blah blah. But I have stuff like amateur writing and all those things. I have that listed as well because it actually shows a little bit about what kind of character you are, and especially in the software industry. Fall asleep by now. Oh well, thank you very much for pointing out that I'm so boring you can fall asleep. I will have to up my game a little bit, I guess. No, but in the software business, you are very likely to come across people who either play board games or role-playing games and all that. So actually just stepping up and saying, hey, I do that as well, is actually something that can be useful. It might be able to get you inside the door. I know we've used it when we are hiring people at my current place until the pandemic hit and everyone got shut down and we couldn't go to work and couldn't assemble people, all that. We used to have board game nights about once per month that I arranged, and it's actually something that people are getting asked or told. See you, Bill. See you, Alena. So people are actually being told that we have these social events where we play board games, and that actually is something that a lot of people respond very well to, because a lot of, shall we call them, normal people actually do play board games. And we're not just talking about Clue or Monopoly or the classic board games like that. We're actually talking social deduction games. We're talking maybe Pandemic these days. I spoke to my barber when I went both last month and today. I went to have my beard fixed today. And she's played Pandemic for the first time about a month ago. And she knows I'm volunteering at the board game cafe. So she just said that she tried this game. She couldn't remember what it was called, but it was actually really, really interesting and very easy to learn. And even though it had looked a bit daunting, she tried it and found it really enjoyable. That was just plain old Pandemic. So that was really fun. Yeah. Oh hey, so thank you for that. That's quite a reference, Britt. I'm up there with the mighty, the great ones. I still have all of this to finish. And they even threw in this piece of ice, which has a defensive effect in the game. But I think I'm gonna go for the last two Yetis on stream, and then I think my voice needs a little bit of rest and I should probably get some sleep as well. I do have work tomorrow. Oh my god, what? The mini? The quote-unquote mini? Well, I think it's kind of more of a crap. ish thing. Oh, right, Dave. These are from the board game Cthulhu Wars, which is an asymmetrical strategy game where you basically play each faction is one of the old Lovecraftian horrors like Cthulhu. Obviously, you have Hastur, you have Nyarlathotep, you have Shub-Niggurath, you have Chuchu, you have Tatsukwa, or just name dropping, yo. So yeah, huge louse. Yeah, louse. A tick, louse. Might or something. And then this one here, which someone for some reason decided was female, even though gender doesn't really make sense for elder gods, but something about it just kind of went. I think it's maybe the sinuous curves and the, I don't know, awesomeness of it, I guess. Fucking nice monster. Yeah, it's an amazing game, and it came out with 4 factions, and then I think they're at 11 or so now, and one of them is for a friend. I'm painting these minis. I don't have the game myself, but I know that he's ordering all the new ones, all the new factions as they come out, and I just have to play with the Baptistis faction because it is basically an elder Egyptian god with cats all over the place. And it is a crazy amount of plastic. You are absolutely correct. Which also, when painting this, when we planned it to give him for his birthday present, our present to him is the paint and actually painting the miniatures for him. So we talked a little bit about how quickly you could do it, and my estimate was actually too low. I would say I guessed that it could be done in a couple of hours per faction. But as you can see, I'm now 1.5 hours in, and I have not even started on the large ones. After that, there's also the bases and a little touch up here and there. So I'm guessing for me, with the speed I'm painting, which is not the fastest in the world, it's still about, I would say about 4 or 5 hours per faction. And he has 11. Or maybe he has 9 or 10 with a few more coming in. So he'll be at 11 pretty soon. We are putting in a lot of hours, and he's actually also started painting a few of them himself, despite claiming that he hates to paint and that he cannot paint to save his own life and blah blah blah. But he's still painted 2 or 3 factions already, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, and we talked a bit about doing airbrushing, but with the contrast paints which we're using, because we basically just want to do the highlights. We want to emphasize the details of the miniatures. We don't want to make them fully detailed. And the reason we're not using airbrushes is that the contrast paints are not good with airbrushes. That's what I've been told. Haven't tried it myself. And the reason that they're not good is that you want to splash on a very thick coat. As you can see here, it shouldn't be. It's one of these things. It should be thick, but not too thick. And how do you explain that with words? I mean, this one here, that's too much. But when you spread it out, it should still be so much that it soaks into all the recesses. And getting that effect out of an airbrush is really difficult, because part of what happens when the paint comes out of the airbrush, at least to my experience, is that it dries up a little bit. So you'll get a nice even coat all over the miniature instead of actually soaking it. Unless you really lay on a heavy coat, and then I think it's just probably take about as long anyway. So yeah, let's do a little bit more up in the face. So yeah. Yep, fairly thick when contrast painting. If you're painting flat surfaces like Space Marines, you want to be a little bit more careful than I am here, because here I take advantage of the miniature having a lot of bumps. It's basically one big giant fluff ball. So anything that smells of fur or something like that, leathery skin, something with a lot of small bumps, really easy, really good. Just slap it on, spread it around a little bit, make sure you don't have too large pools, touch it up a little bit, and you'll basically get the result you see here. And when you look at it on the board, yeah, Space Wolves, for instance, Space Marines, Space Wolves or Space Marines, But doing their armor, you need to be a little bit careful because you want a very even coat, and before it actually dries up fully, the contrast paint will slowly move around on the miniature and contract a little bit to the lower parts, so the parts that should have shadow or at least more paint on them, to get the feel of depth in the miniature. It will slowly work around, but if you just slap it on, it's gonna be uneven, which doesn't really look good. I have down in the basement, I think I have some examples of a Space Marine done with some care and a Space Marine done really quickly with the contrast paints and other similar kinds of paints or mixes. And it's really clear to see that it actually pays off spending more time doing it, even with contrast paints. Which, the way my mind works and digress, brings us to the topic of how they were originally at least marketed as being good for beginners. And in many ways they are, because you can take your Space Marine army or your orcs or your Skaven army. Your Skaven army would be probably really easy to paint with all of this. And you could just slap it on and work for it. Exactly. You're absolutely right about that. Has a longer drying time than normal acrylics. Just be aware of it. It'll need around 20-30 minutes, I would say, at least, to fully dry. Once you put on a coat, it's really difficult to go back in because of the way it contracts and the way the medium, the kind they use for the paints and all that. If you just want a quick sampling, what you can do is you can take, if you have some either acrylic ink or maybe one of the thinner paints, you can just, if you have normal acrylic paints like the other Citadel paints or Army Painters, Vallejo, whatever, and just really thin it down with some matte medium. We have some here. Liquitex, for instance, there are a lot of different brands for this. Just thin it down a lot with this, maybe add some water as well until you get, as you say, somewhere between a wash and the paint. Go heavy on the medium, not so heavy on the water, I would say. Look at Goobertown Hobbies. He actually has really good video on YouTube. I promote him a lot, I know, because I really like his way of just calmly and quietly discussing how you best paint and what his experiences are. And oh my, a cat just walked into the picture, better just move it away. Not here obviously, but in his videos. And he does a lot of fun stuff, but he also did a really good experimental video where he just showed off what can be done with medium paints, inks, compared to contrast paints. And I like the contrast paints as I generally like the Citadel colors. I don't like the paint pots, which is why I use other brands normally, because I like to use a wet palette and getting things from one of these out onto a wet palette without wasting half the paint on your when it gets stuck in your brush. I prefer the dropper bottles, like this one here, where you can just unscrew the lid and you can just take a drop or two as you need it, and you don't waste a lot of paint. So that's what I don't like about Citadel, is their pots. But the paints themselves, really, really good. They're also expensive. The contrast paints here in Denmark cost around 55 kroners, which is, I think the going rate in the US is about $7 or $8 US dollars for a paint of contrast paint from Citadel. And you can do it, if you're mixing your own, you can do it easily for less than half of that, probably about a quarter if you buy in bulk and do a lot of it. But I do like, I have to admit, the fact that you can go down and you can buy another one and make sure you get, the quality control, you get the good type of mediums they use. I like the pure quality, and you can get the exact same color again. Having to remix a color, at least to me, is more or less impossible. So doing a regiment in completely home blended colors. Oh, you have the old one from the 90s. Were they the flip lid that either broke or always got stuck when paint dried in them? I had a ton of those as well. I threw them out when I realized that I couldn't open half of them without knocking over the pots and so on. Yeah, those are the ones. But yeah. No, but the contrast paints, expensive, but good because the quality is quite nice. I've never had problems with Citadel colors splitting, I guess the term is in English, where you can see that all the particles, the pigments, end up at the bottom of the pot, and all the medium and water and stuff end up at the top. I've never had that happen with Citadel paints, even the ones I found that had been sitting in a box for 10 years or so. They worked really fine. Just give them a quick shake and they work. Whereas stuff like the Army Painter, a standard thing people do when they buy Army Painter paints is that they also buy ball bearings or small glass balls, put them into the bottle and then shake it up. Even using a nail polish shaker, small machine you can buy fairly cheap. But having to do that is it's a lot of work, and when I'm sitting sometimes, since I'm sometimes a little stressed for time, I don't have time to spend 2 minutes shaking each color if I need to use, I don't know, 5, maybe 10 colors for a paint job. I finally have time to sit down, paint a miniature, then I have to spend 15 minutes preparing my paints for it. It kind of breaks it for me, if that makes sense. So I sold off almost all my Army Painter stuff, bought Vallejos again instead. They don't separate as much as Army Painter. They do a little, but at least the medium and pigments and so on they use, it mixes better when you do shake them. It takes a lot less effort to get them properly shaken up. Old from manufacturer. Yeah, who made them originally? Haven't they always just been called Citadel? They probably resold them anyway. But again, as I said, with the Citadel paints, I've never had these problems. But I really just don't like the pots. I could go on for hours. That's a rant for another day. Unless Brit really needs to sleep, then definitely do it. So, you're getting there. I should keep him in the frame, I guess. Just quickly do touch up. So, yeah. So, not the most exciting paint job for a miniature at all, but for a few minutes while chatting, I think it's pretty decent. Let's get the light over here so you can see a little better how it soaks down. I mean, this is a very light gray on top of some white primer, so it's not supposed to give a lot of colors. That's the Windwalker faction. Their main color, as you can see here, is a really, really light blue. So we're trying to aim in that general direction. So of course it gets a little darker in the recesses, which is as it's supposed to be, and then almost white at the tops with a little bit of blue coloring in. So that seems to work. Was not something they were made by something else. Okay, for Citadel, that makes sense. And the new ones, I found the new ones to be good. The ones I've tried, but again, because of the pots, I don't have a lot of them. I do have. We're gonna move the camera a bit. As you can see, I do have quite a lot of contrast paints, almost exclusively contrast paints. Hey, that's not true. All of this is something else. I have about 15 or so contrasts. But yeah. But the new ones I've tried, a few of them I've tried, like the layer and base ones. I like them. They were as I expected them to be. They work. They don't split. but I haven't done a lot of painting with the new Citadel colors, so I don't know. So that was all the cultists, all the monsters done. So now we have the 2 great old ones, and we have the giant ice rock flake, whatever. I think maybe calling it a night, unless people are really keen on me yabbering on for another hour or so. I'll get started on the ice. That's always a good place to start. I mean, the greater ones are really fun. But Dave, to show you what I mean about these things here, let's get this one a little bit more light. This is from one of the other factions, and again, this is just the orange color. And if you compare the light blue grayish color, you get the highlights and you get them emphasized a little bit. But when you also have the color like the orange here, it actually, and it's supposed to be orange because it's made orange plastic. It's best time for you, Crystal. Okay, well, say goodnight to the entire family, especially the cats, and thanks for stopping by. So again, you can see the coloring shows off the details of the miniature even at a distance, even at a small webcam. But it also adds the color, which is really vibrant, and you'll be able to see them on the board next to each other. You'll be clearly able to see which faction is which, and you'll be able to see the details of the miniature, which is the reason we are doing this paint job to begin with. And then, of course, we have the big guy over here. Let's just bring him in again. That is the great old one, Tsatsukwa. It took, I don't even know, I didn't time it, but I'm guessing about half an hour or so to paint him. Yeah, see you, Crystal. I will be here next Wednesday. But for now, I think that will be it. Let's see if the camera wants to autofocus on the work we've done. We've done 4 Yetis, 4 Wendigos, 6 Cultists, and the High Priest. I think that's a pretty decent amount for the time being. So anyway, I will be off. Thank you for stopping by. Always a great pleasure to see wonderful people and chatting with you all. I hope it's not the last time. I will, as I said, stream every Wednesday at 9 p.m. my time. And, well, I will see you soon.